Today I'm here to talk with all of you about the current climate crisis that our planet is going through and share some of the ways in which you all, the youths, the future of our country, can make a course correction in how our future would look like. So, we all are in an age that is transforming faster than ever imagined. We are in an age which is fueled by development, which is fueled by technologies, and which is fueled by artificial intelligence. But at the same time, many Earth system scientists and climate scientists are seriously concerned because there is another transformation happening on the face of planet Earth. Unfortunately, not in the right direction. Why is this happening? Have we forgotten the ways in which we have been raised, the values with which we have been raised? Mata Bhumi Putroham Prithvyaham. Earth is our mother and we are her children. We must take care of it just like we take care of our family. As we grow up, we have been revering nature in its various elements and through various festivals like Pongal, Bihu, Sankranti, Holi, so on and so forth. But have we also internalized the value of nature and how our actions are actually harming the nature in so many ways? We don't until we land up in universities and institutes like these which teach us. And I was also fortunate to be a part of another very big university, the Indian Institute of Forest Management. It changed me as a person. It changed my perspective towards nature. And here I am, 16 years down the line, researching on climate and working with decision makers, working with the stakeholders and the last mile communities who need help because they are being impacted the most because of climate change. Let me begin by this graph. Here, you're all the students of science, right? What does this graph says? When I was studying this graph like 16 years back, 17 years back, it was the same. There's no change in the trend in which we are pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. This graph depicts 3 of the most significant greenhouse gases that human development has pumped into the atmosphere, just as if the air is a garbage bin. See, this graph also talks about 800,000 years of timescape, and the trend has been very much same. However, as you can see, from 1900s or so, there is a sharp rise in carbon dioxide. We've already increased 52% of the composition of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We've already increased 164% of the composition of methane in the atmosphere. And mind you, it is 28 times more potent in warming the planet than carbon dioxide. We have already increased 25% of nitrous oxide present in the air, which is about 280 to 300 times more potent in warming the atmosphere. And guess what? These are naturally occurring greenhouse gases. We have added more to it. The gases that never existed in the atmosphere like the CFCs, the PFCs and the sulfur hexafluoride. And they have a tendency to warm 10,000 times more than carbon dioxide. Where are we headed? But that said, is carbon dioxide a bad gas? No. If it was bad, nature wouldn't have made it in the atmosphere in the first place. What is bad is the excess of it. And that's what the problem is. But now imagine how these gases are increasing. Let's see how our society has transformed since the last 200 years. And particularly as we have data more from 1900 and beyond, the population has increased globally 5 times. The energy that we are using, the primary energy consumption, has increased 10 times. We primarily were using the biomass energy, and today we are using mostly the fossil fuels. Markets have expanded. How many times? 50 times. The economy has expanded 50 times. The road length has increased 60 port lines. Fertilizers, we were never using it. And today, we are pumping the soil with chemical fertilizers 200 times more. Urban areas have increased 5 to 7 times. And the forest areas, unfortunately, has decreased 25 to 30%. And most of this forest are the most rich and diverse forest in the tropical zone, including the Western Ghats of India. So that's the reason the GHGs have spiked in the atmosphere, which have already warmed the planet by 1.2 degrees centigrade. And the climate tipping point is at 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now, why does this 1.5 degrees centigrade matters? Factor this. 1.5 C is almost about 2.7 Fahrenheit. And if your body temperature increases from 97 Fahrenheit to 100 Fahrenheit, you have fever, right? Are you functional? Are you working? Do you go to school or college or your university? We can't. And that's exactly what's happening to the earth. The earth is severely having fever and it cannot function to its optimal and proper capacities. And the reason being the greenhouse gases. And in all this process, we have directly or indirectly harmed the very environment where we live. We have polluted the very air that we are breathing, the very water that we are drinking. We have spoiled the soil that grows food for us, and we have changed irreversibly the climate that has sustained the human species for thousands of years. Now that said, in the process of all of this, is each one of us. Under all this developmental change that we have seen is our lifestyle, is our consumption. And because of the rapidly increasing consumptions, because of the factories and the fossil fuels that is needed to fuel it, and because of the land that is being diverted from forest to grow our food, to, make our houses, or to mine resources that the factories can use to make products. Because of all of that, we have already crossed 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries which are required for stability on Earth. By 2025, this is the latest assessment done by the Stockholm Resilience Center, which shows that out of 9 key planetary functions, 7 we have already, increased beyond the safe operating space. And this will all come back to us in terms of the catastrophe that we are seeing, the floods, the sea level rise, the landslide, the melting of glaciers and ice sheets, the cyclones, so on and so forth. Every other year, we have more warming and higher records of temperatures. And unfortunately, we are very fast approaching this climate tipping point of 1.5 degrees centigrade because of the GHG forcings, and slowly the window to act and the window to recover is also reducing because there is a budget, there is a limit to how much carbon dioxide can the air really contain. We are at the moment the present day yellow, and if we miss this climate tipping point, if we hit it, we will be in the state B of hothouse climate, which will have irreversible impact on the entire global climate systems, on our production of food, on water resources, on human health, and on most vulnerable communities and the small little islands, that are around the globe that so many people live. So, as we are approaching this tipping point, do you think the world leaders are sitting just like that? Today is also a landmark day. The 12th of December, 10 years back, the Global Paris Climate Agreement was signed and got approved. 10 years down the line, what are we doing? We are nowhere near stabilizing the greenhouse gases. Every year at the Conference of Parties, the climate COPs, global leaders meet in the Paris Climate Agreement, 195 countries committed to reduce their emissions to keep the planet within the 1.5 degrees centigrade of warming. We've also taken net zero target. And by the way, India took the net zero target of 2070. Many countries have taken targets of 2040 by net zero. But are we anywhere close to that? Unfortunately not. And we are soon to slide on this runway and very likely to be in the state B, the hothouse climate, just in 5 years from today. We entered a decisive decade of the 2020s wherein our choices and actions can really predict or can really make the future safe. But unfortunately, even halfway through, we are not stabilizing the greenhouse gases as a global community. And as I already said, the temperatures are rising every single year. Didn't we experience 2024 and 25 as the most hottest years? Even in Ahmedabad, most cities, I'm sure, and you would feel the same thing. And remember, temperature is the central climate parameter that reinforces changes in everything else, whether it is precipitation or the melting of glaciers or the cyclones or the wind and pressure, everything else. So, as I said, lifestyles are central to the change that we want to see. And youths are the catalyst of those change. Whether we want comfort and therefore crisis out of it, or whether we contribute to climate correction. Whether it is carbon footprint or whether it is our handprint that can really give positive environmental impacts from our own individual action. It is our choice, and therefore, back to these questions now. If we were aware that because of our lifestyles, because of our choices, the planet is being pushed into such a trouble, would we have ever done it? We wouldn't have, isn't it? But who would tell us that what we are doing is not the right thing? The industries won't, because they are more concerned about their profits. The government doesn't, because it is more concerned about its economy. The media doesn't, because it's their clients, and the poor animals and species and the biodiversity that's dying every single day. They also can't because they don't have voice, or maybe we are not ready to listen. So who would tell us this? It is the institutes like these. It is your own friends who are really concerned about what is happening and they really want to take action and change the future of the planet. Only they will come up to say that what we are doing is wrong and we need a course correction for this climate crisis. And talking about institutes, education does empower us. But we need to trust education to be a solid tool for mass awareness and for mass actions. Our previous speakers told about 15 lakh schools and 50,000 universities and institutes in India. Imagine where we are sitting on the scale that we can reach if we educate every single student, every single youth to know what is wrong with the climate. It's only education that will tell the youths that it's just not a question of science. It is also a question of equity and justice, because those who are least responsible are most impacted. It is only education which will tell them that adaptation is as important as mitigation. It is only education that will tell them that the solution to climate crisis will have to be born and incubated on the ground in the local context, and they cannot come from the technology transfers that the globe hopes for. And it is only the education which would give them the right information to fight and to debunk the misconceptions and misinformation that is being spread on social media against climate change. Therefore, education is definitely a powerful tool to reach out and catalyze so many youths into action for tomorrow. In fact, the National Education Policy of 2020 has also envisioned to integrate climate education into the formal curriculum and to promote project-based learning, outdoor learning, as well as green skills. And that is going to be the future. Many institutes, including Center for Environment Education, are working towards revising the syllabuses and textbooks and developing modules for youths to engage them in the realities on the ground. Here, you might find this interesting. The SDG handprint Action Lab is a program that CEE has been doing to engage youths in the higher education institutes to move out of their classroom, to go beyond the curriculum, to go into the field, into the realities where they live, to study the ecosystems and the wetlands around them, to engage with the communities like the street vendors or, even the farmers or the slum dwellers, to go out and see what are the innovations happening on the ground to meet the recyclers, to meet the biogas units, manufacturers, or to see the solar farms. Imagine how much they will learn in the process and how much they will be therefore able to incubate and innovate from what's coming from the ground. So that's exactly what the SDG Handprint Lab is doing, and many universities are part of this action. And so many youths are also engaging in positive climate action and the future that we want to see. So I would like to conclude with saying that the course for climate correction is in the hands of you all. Youths, you are the catalyst of change. And how can you do it? By first, making climate education and amplifying climate education, by integrating it into different subjects, by moving out into the local spaces to studying them and finding solutions, by networking and partnering with the local stakeholders to co-create sustainable solutions, to pushing for policies that demand justice, and finally, by imbibing sustainable lifestyles yourself and inspiring others to do the same. Because you are the driving force of today and the leaders of tomorrow. The time to act for you is now. The place to start is this beautiful campus, and the force is within you to transform and see the future that we want. Thank you very much.